Hello and welcome back, everyone. So in this video, we are going to talk about, this model that I'm going to share with you today. So we've been talking about creating peace in our inner self, and also we have spoken about how, there are different teams working together in organizations or even in family, do different forces, masculine and feminine, and in organization or in the world when countries work together. There's sometimes conflict arises, as we've already discussed, because there's an imbalance between two different kind of teams, forces, or people. And so basically at that time we have to think about how we can actually perform to a maximum. And in order to perform to a maximum, we do need a process that aligns, all those forces which are imbalanced with each other. And so I have therefore developed this model where we can actually follow through on this strategy in order for us to consolidate and really create the best results in our families, organization, or even in the world by using this model. So in order for us to start thinking about world peace or creating peace, within our family, and using the model of consolidation or a model of unification, thinking of from a unified mind, unified mind and heart, and coming from that place of love where you're inclusive. You're not saying that one side is going to take over the other, but you're inclusive and you do want to find a situation that is a win-win situation, right? So when you want to work together and you want to achieve the desired and the best result, then, this model can be used in order to create progress, which is really, really fast, and it is consolidated, and it is sort of like in a way that, it doesn't really creates any kind of imbalance in the society, right? So we are going to basically look at this model today, and it starts with, having a common objective. So whenever two teams or two forces are working together in any organization, family, we need to have a common objective that is going to align everything together, because we need to start with the end in our mind, right? We need to start with the end in our mind, that, what is it that we do want to create, right? We want to, in this situation, because we are talking about peace, so we want to create peace within ourselves, in our families, in our organization, and in the world, right? So in order for us to create peace, which is our common objective, then we need to think about how can we unify those forces or people or events or circumstances which are conflicting, right? And balance them out in order to create the desired outcome that we do want to create, right? So this model is basically, I call it as if the model of creation, because using this process, we can create on a higher level. We can create, in a way that is authentic, and it has integrity, and it's a higher level, and it is also very inclusive. So sort of like a model which is all in all, right? So in order for us to understand this model, we have to see that there are different types of forces working in a situation wherever there is conflict, and the place where we do want to create peace. So normally in the situation where we are balancing out, the people, circumstances, in order for us to obtain the best outcome from that situation, in order to create peace, we would see normally there is, a force that is trying to, sort of like there's a power imbalance in the situation, right? There's power imbalance in the situation, and maybe one team want to dominate the other, and what we want to do is we want to bring them together to work together in a consolidated way, because both have their own specialities, right? They both have their own specialities, and they have their own goodness that is needed in the situation, because the sum of two separate parts is greater than the total of the parts itself. So if we make them work together, we can create something higher, better, and something which is even more unique than what the basic product will be in a situation, or what the basic result will be in a situation. So we having looking at that, we do have a force, two different kinds of forces. That's why we are having the conflict, right? So normally in a situation, we do have the force which is the force of power, and the force which is the force of love. If we look at nature, like just as in, if we look at our earth and our system and nature, we see that there are humans, and then we have systems running those humans, right? We humans use systems to run ourselves, and then systems sometimes run us, because we have to follow through on certain obligations and liabilities in certain situations, and we have to make sure that we are fulfilling those systems, right? So but sometimes what happens is that when for instance two different systems clash. For instance, if you have a look at that, when there are countries, they both have their system running, right? And the power between both clashes, right? And both have their system. So if you have a look, the force of power, and then they both have their systems, they both have their processes, they both have their structure, and the structure brings in power, authority, and rules, right? Power is your capacity to act out something, and authority is your license, or your that you do have the right in that situation to act out your power, right? That's your authority. And rules are basically your policies and your procedures that you design, that this is what we stand for, this is what's important to us, this is what matters, or this is what we need. So you create your a country creates its own rules and regulations, and like it has its objectives in a certain situation. When two countries come together or something, they may have a power struggle, because they both have their own systems and processes and structures, and their power, authority, their rules may clash with each other. So for them, how can they basically use this model to align themselves, right? The main thing would be to, first of all, come back to the fact that what is our common objective, right? The countries need to think about their common objective, which is a higher objective. You can't always just go about in terms of what I want. Like, a country cannot think only being part of Earth, being part of this universe, being part of the world. You can't just say that, what is it that I want, right? So you have, it is your responsibility, your universal responsibility, to say that the common objective basically is what is the highest good, and what is good for me and what's good for others, right? So you sort of like looking at that win-win situation where you are working as a universal force and for the highest good. So the countries need to work as a higher force, rather than basically just working individually, just being very entitled or territorial about their own countries and their lands and all of that. When you live on one earth and you share a universe and you share the earth, share the resources, how it is then that you can consolidate and you can work together for the greater good, and to create peace, and to lead to unification. And that unification is what we need at the moment. The darkness in the world, or the conflicts, or the cold wars, when things are not going the right way, that is a situation where we need to think that the solution is higher. If you don't think from a higher perspective, you cannot solve things. You have to start thinking from a higher perspective rather than from a very narrow one-on-one perspective. Even though the narrow perspective is good when you're taking care of yourself and you are being sort of like focused on what are the immediate needs of your people, your country, yourself. Even thinking of it in terms of an organization, people would think about like, what do we need, like in an organization, how as an organization we flourish and all of that. But then what about you're not thinking about the world and your customers and all of that? So it's all about then rising up and looking at the higher picture and, like the bigger picture, the bird's eye view, and then considering that being part of this universe, being part of Earth, and being, a high force, how can we sort of like create, unification that leads to a higher outcome as well? Because when you think about when your objective is a higher objective, a common higher objective, then what you create, your outcome will be a common higher outcome as well. Like I mentioned, that the sum of two parts is greater than the total of the parts itself, right? So that's why, we need to think of resolving our conflicts in this way, right? In a higher way and in the unified way. So we need to, balance the power with love, right? We need to understand that there is not just one force of power in the universe, there's another force as well, and that force is the force of love. Love comes in, as in, if you look at from a human perspective, like as a race, we are humans, right? And so looking at us in a human perspective, humans, what makes human is that they have a soul, they have a heart, they have feelings. People could have different spiritual beliefs, but as far as your emotions are concerned, you have your feelings and your emotions right there, right? Humans do feel and they have emotions, and those emotions are diverse, right? We could feel happy, you could feel love, you could feel all this set of emotions, and you could also feel the challenging emotions that we have already discussed, that on an individual level you may feel the challenging emotions that you do need to process and bring yourself back to your high functioning state. So in order to understand that, then when is it that humans perform on their highest level? Humans perform on their highest level when they are experiencing positive emotions, when they are feeling when they're feeling love, when they're feeling calm, when they're feeling centered. That's when they humans basically experience higher emotions, and they perform in a way which is high as well, so they're highly functioning. And this is you know love basically leads to nurturing. So love is the strongest, the most positive emotion if you look at the a set of emotions that humans have, right? And love overtakes pain, and it just heals. It is healing, and it is relieving, and it nurtures. And the objective of love is to protect and preserve, right? We look at that in all these situations where we have world leaders, for instance, who are working for love, what they're trying to do is they're trying to protect humanity. And what exactly is humanity? The welfare of humanity on one level, but also it is about protecting the sensitive parts of humans, like humans do feel, they have emotions, they have feelings, just for the sake of achieving an objective. You can't ignore all the humans that are there, in a country. For instance, if two countries are standing against each other, which we are seeing that at the moment, the conflict in the world, I don't have to mention it, but there are things that if you look at the history, even if you talk about the history and the